Hey, good morning. It's Patricia Murphy. It's Thursday. This is Seattle Now. Seattle's new law and order city attorney is pledging more attention on repeat offenders who target the city's businesses. And Davison's plan enlists prosecutors and SPD to deter shoplifting, trespassing, and assault. KUOW's Amy Radil has details and reaction. But first, let's get you caught up. Mayor Harrell is hitting the brakes on a plan to crack down on disorderly conduct near 3rd and Pine. Seattle Times reports that SPD began issuing warnings near bus stops earlier this week with a plan to start ticketing people under a city ordinance regulating disorderly bus conduct, things like smoking, drinking, and loud music. SPD said enforcement was supposed to begin today, but the mayor's office tells the Times that the decision is on hold while they continue to keep an eye on how things are going on 3rd. Change at the top at Starbucks yesterday. The company announced that Chief Executive Officer Kevin Johnson will step down next month, and it's bringing back founder Howard Schultz as interim CEO. Johnson spent 5 years in the job and leaves in the midst of a growing union push at stores across the country. Starbucks says Schultz will stick around to find and mentor the company's next CEO, a volunteer job that will earn him $1 in pay. Starbucks stock was up 5% on the news. And if you're looking for last-minute guidance on your March Madness bracket, maybe a former leader of the free world can help you. Former President Obama has Gonzaga going all the way in the men's tournament. Not a big surprise. The Zags finished the season as the number 1 team for the second year in a row. They'll start this year's tournament against the number 16 Georgia State Panthers this afternoon.
Put down the stuff. Put it down.
Are you going to pay for it?
No, he's a thief. This is what he does. Put it down. Put down my stuff and get out of the store. Put it down. That's it. I can't do anything.
When did you call 911?
I can't. Because it's below. There's only $120 in stuff. They won't come.
That's a TikTok video from a Seattle Lowe's Hardware. In it, an employee in a red vest follows a man out the front of the store. As the man walks out, his hands are full with a couple of boxes of merchandise under his arm. He's not putting the stuff down. And according to the person who posted it, this happens multiple times a day. The same guy at the same store. Many local retailers say they're facing a similar challenge with theft. Now, City Attorney Ann Davison is promising to reset how her office deals with repeat offenders. Davison announced her plan on Tuesday. KUOW reporter Amy Radil has been following it. Hey, Amy, thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Amy, tell me about Ann Davison's plan.
Well, so this week, her office announced what they're calling the High Utilizer Initiative. And she says this is basically an attempt to reset expectations around public safety.
Because we will be looking at individuals that are engaged in a repeated criminal activity, resulting in a disproportionate amount of crime within the city of Seattle. We need to disrupt the cycle of crime and meaningfully intervene with individuals that have fallen through the cracks, frankly, of our social safety nets and criminal justice system.
So Davison says what it really takes for her office is coordination with police and King County prosecutors to build cases against these people. She implies that that was not happening when her predecessor, Pete Holmes, was in the office. And King County Jail has not been booking people who are facing these types of charges. And they have now agreed to book up to 20 people who are affected by this initiative.
Okay, so Davison says she has a list of these, quote, high utilizers. What can you tell us about who's on that list?
So these are 118 people who are charged mostly with kind of low-level and nonviolent offenses. They are misdemeanor theft, trespass, assault, and weapons charges. But these 118 people have a staggeringly high volume of these offenses. Together, they're accused of more than 2,400 different incidents in the past 5 years.
Okay, now, the city has identified who it's interested in targeting, and there's a list of people that they want to target. Tell me, under this new plan, how things might go differently for these people if they are arrested.
Yeah, and they've said they're not going to make the whole list public. They are willing to talk about some of the names, but they said these people are, targets of law enforcement investigations, so they're not going to be publishing an entire list. But, like the story of the person we heard about at the beginning, prosecutors say that the man in that TikTok video is named Dylan Jackman, and he's accused of dozens of shoplifting offenses in the last couple years, all in North Seattle at Lowe's and Target and Home Depot, as you said, sometimes multiple times per day. He's also accused of brandishing a knife, and he has threatened to kill employees. So he has been trespassed from there, and he's been the subject of a harassment order. So prosecutors say he does pose a threat, and his behavior is escalating. And they have now charged him with 3 felony counts of burglary in the second degree. At this point, he is in custody, and this is someone who would not have met the conditions to be booked into jail until this new initiative was launched.
It certainly sounds like a frustrating and scary situation for retailers involved in this, Amy. Of course, booking more people into jail is one way to try to curb these kinds of criminal offenses, but you and I both know there's often a lot going on for the people who enter into the criminal justice system. Is there a plan to address some of those things, the things that often come up, like untreated mental health issues and drug dependency?
I can't say at this point that there is a plan, but Davison emphasizes that she does want to intervene and get these people the services they need to address their behavior. So she hasn't given details yet about when those conversations would happen, whether these people would be given alternatives to prosecution, for example, if they, engage in getting certain kinds of services. But she said that people who face felony charges are eligible for a program called drug court, which she said can be a meaningful intervention. And that's one reason that she's helping aggregate some of these misdemeanors into a felony charge so that they'd be eligible for that. I think this is one of the outcomes that we really need to track and see what happens.
Yeah, I'm glad you'll be paying attention to this. Bottom line, Amy, is many of the people who are arrested under this initiative will need an attorney. What are the public defenders saying about this so far? They'll likely see many of these cases, actually.
Probably most of them. I've seen 2 different reactions so far. Lisa Dugard heads the Public Defender Association. She's addressed needs of this population for a long time. She calls this a reasonable framework, and she says she hopes that the solutions that the city attorney is talking about will really be individualized to help each person. Anita Condelwall heads the King County Department of Public Defense. She was much more critical of this announcement, and she said Seattle has tried this before.
It looks a lot like programs that were recycled from 2012 and 2019 that have been ineffective and incredibly costly. The only guaranteed outcome that we have seen of these kinds of programs is racial disproportionality that is endemic in any criminal legal system-based program and the continued cycling of individuals through that system.
Her office even pointed to a KUOW News story from 2012 where a city council member named Bruce Harrell, you may recognize that name, said that they were going to clean up criminal activity with a special focus at 3rd and Pine in Seattle. Still a big focus of law enforcement in the city. So Condelwall says the details of interventions for these people are vague, and the most concrete step is the agreement to book these people into jail. So that's the wrong direction in her eyes.
And Anita Condelwall makes a fair point. This is not necessarily a groundbreaking idea that we've come up with here. Is there an origin story, though?
Well, as we just talked about, that story was 10 years old. But in the last few years, Scott Lindsey was a public safety advisor in Mayor Ed Murray's administration. And then after that, he brought out a lot of public information about what he called prolific offenders. He wrote reports starting in 2019 called System Failure that were widely read and publicized about, kind of criminal disorder and prolific offenders. They really highlighted this problem of a small number of people committing dozens and dozens of crimes. And now Ann Davison has hired Scott Lindsey as a deputy city attorney. So it's certainly plausible that he's drawing on that research as part of this new initiative.
And Amy, it's understandable, of course, that retailers would welcome any attempt to address their immediate situation when it comes to theft. And this sure does sound like a plan. But what is it reasonable to expect from this effort?
Yeah, the King County Prosecutor's Office said, the managers at Lowe's were so happy to hear that Jackman and some of these other people are going to be booked into jail. They've been dealing with this and they're relieved. And King County Prosecutor Dan Satterberg said he's glad the city attorney's office is coordinating more closely with his office. But he said the public should keep in mind the courts may not have the resources to truly help these defendants change their behaviors.
I think it's important to have realistic expectations about what a prosecution in either a municipal court or a superior court for property offense, what we think that is going to do for the individual who's involved. I think it can give the neighborhood a break. I think it can give the store a break if this person is a frequent shoplifter. But in terms of long-term outcomes for people with serious behavioral health issues, the court doesn't have any magic in its toolbox.
And if anyone, Amy, would know that, it would be the prosecuting attorney's office. So it sounds like right now the main focus of this effort will be making arrests.
I think the jail is going to be the main focus as we look at which direction Seattle's going on this issue. In the past 2 years, the King County Jail has really reduced the jail population and booked fewer people, and that was in line with public health guidance around the pandemic. If the pandemic restrictions ease, then we'll be watching for whether jail officials allow people like these lower-level offenders to be placed in custody and whether judges keep them there. There's going to be tension around that because Dow Constantine, the King County executive, has announced he wants to phase out the Seattle jail completely. And public defenders say incarceration only brings more harm for people. But we also hear the business owners and employees who say these frequent offenders are putting a major burden on them.
KUOW's Amy Radil, a flashy plan for a very complicated problem, for sure. Really appreciate your reporting. Thanks so much.
Oh, thank you, Trish.
Thanks for listening to Seattle Now. Jason Pagano produced today's show. Matt Jorgensen does our theme music. I'm Patricia Murphy. See you tomorrow.